Yo, what's up guys, it's Lun-Gi. So today we're going to be taking a look at the new Magnifictorm archetype. So this archetype is coming out in the new set, mainlining DDDs. I think it's coming out in October in the TCG, but the OCG should have it maybe at the end of July. So yeah, it's an archetype that features MST, and yeah, the quick play spell cards, they can search out MST, so you can activate one of the effects, each of them once per turn. So the first one is some other effect. For example, this one draws 2 and discards 1. And then the second part of the effect is to add MST from your deck or graveyard to your hand, which is very nice, which means that you'll always have access to Mystical Space Typhoon in this deck. So this deck has a lot of special summons. So we're main decking 3 copies of Vanity's Fiend because as you'll see in a moment, you're able to just like combo out your monsters and then top that off for the Vanity's Fiend as like your last summon. Alright, so we're going first in game 2 against Blue Eyes. Okay, so here we activate the first quick play. So this one sends or adds MST. And then we chain the second one, which is Side Trance. So we really want to draw cards. So usually like I'll just activate this one first just to see what the opponent has. For example, activate the send effect to see if they have like Ash or something. And then if they don't chain anything, or if I don't see any responses, then I'll chain the draw spell card. And one nice thing about this being a quick play is that you can actually draw cards before you use Extravagance, because Extravagance only stops you from drawing cards after you resolve its effect. So you can just use your draw effects in the draw phase or standby phase, and then you'll be able to use your Extravagance to draw in the main phase. So we chain MST here because the last effects of each of the Speller Traps set themselves if they're destroyed by MST, which is very nice, which means that you can actually just like use MST to reset your good quick play spell cards. Alright, so we draw 2, discard 1, and then we search for MST, and then we trigger Side Trance to set it. Then we go for Extravagance. Okay, Extravagance draws us our main searcher. So this is the main searcher. If you activate a quick play spell card, which is why we destroyed our own card with MST, so we can trigger its effect. You can summon it, then you can add two cards, MST and or a Magnifictorm card from your graveyard and or deck. So for example, if you're locked under draw, then you can just add your card from the graveyard. So we special summon it, then trigger its on summon effect. We add back 2. Okay, so we add back our searches. So this one searches for a Magnifictorm monster. Okay, so we search for the other searcher. We search a quick play spell card. Alright, we get the rotor, and then we pop the rotor so we can set it with its secondary effect. So we set it. And this one summons from the deck, but we can't activate anything now. Alright, then we top that off with Vanity's Fiend. So Totem Bird is a nice card for the extra deck because this card wind locks you, and so does this Chicky. So if you start with her, then you can't make any other monsters that are not wind. So Totem Bird is nice because it's a spell and trap negate, so that can protect Vanity's Fiend. But he gets lucky here. He top decks impermanence, so we negate impermanence, but he also has Lightning Storm, so he has to pop the monsters, but we just chain search so we can trigger this on the next chain. Okay, so we trigger this, and then we summon our chick, and then she can add back again. Right, so add back 2 cards. Alright, so we chain MST here because we want to summon this big chick. She negates monster effects, so we chain this so we can hard negate to remove his monster. Alright, so in the draw phase, we just activate so we can just pop his back row and then trigger our guy. Alright, so he just surrenders there. This next duel is up against K9, so we're going second. We asked the starter, but they have another copy. So this is K9 Vanquish Soul. But the one thing that I don't like about K9 Vanquish Soul is that the Vanquish Soul part of the deck is kind of weak. You need like multiple cards for it to work. So he's got the Book of Moon here, and then this can hard negate my chick, which is why I started by normal summoning this. Okay, so he can peek the hand. Right, so he is able to peek the hand. So instead of hitting the searcher, he hits Talents, which may have been the right call, right? So our next two cards would have been like Droll and Ash, so we would have drawn basically nothing of the talents, but I guess he wanted to just like play it safe. But it's probably just a bad idea to just allow me to keep this, because it does add 2 cards. Okay, so we change the Book of Moon, which doesn't actually matter. So we search for 2, we summon our Searcher, Searcher Quick Play, so we just activate it to draw 2 and then discard 1. So we summon this guy. So this guy is technically like the boss monster. So if a Quick Play spell card is activated, you can summon it from your hand. That means even if the opponent activates a Quick Play. For example, if you're playing against Memento and you have this in your hand, they activate like Bone Party, you summon this, and then if they activate Fusion later in the turn, you can use this other effect to shuffle 2 cards your opponent controls into the deck. So now that's why we're using Call by the Grave, so we can just banish this chick, and then we can shuffle back his 2 monsters. Alright, so we use this 4 here, but we weren't really planning on going into the extra deck. So we just attack for some damage and then we pass turn. Okay, so he draws another Stake Your Soul, and that's GG. This next duel we're going up against Megalith. Alright, so we activate our draw card and then we pop it with MST so we can just set it again. Okay, summon our Searcher and then we add 2, so we're adding the trap card this time. We go for Extravagance. Okay, we draw 2, we draw Vanity's Fiend. So if he doesn't have an out, it's going to be a pretty short duel. Alright, so we trigger our Megalith to summon from the deck. So basically here we go full combo with the deck. Totem Bird, we got Vanity's Fiend, and then we have a full setup. So alright, so we've got the Foolish Burial, and we've got the trap card which allows MST to negate and also shuffles back our quick play spell cards. And then we've got our draw card, and then we've got 1 MST for the negate. And we've got Totem Bird, Vanity's Fiend, and then we've got our monster negate. And then in the graveyard we do have 1 MST, but if we have a second MST we can negate and destroy. Alright, so he basically doesn't have an out to Vanity's Fiend, so he just scoops here. Yeah, so the deck is a little bit unfair, being able to just like, you know, play Vanity's Fiend in the main deck, but otherwise these are the ratios. So we've got Vortex Beauty and Pyre Phoenix. They can summon themselves from the graveyard if you activate MST. They can summon themselves from their hand if any quick play spell card is activated. And then yeah, this one is removal. So this is trigger removal, which is nice, which means you can use it on either turn. And this is just a monster negate basically. This is the card that allows you to basically negate Nibiru on your turn. If you don't have Vanity's Fiend, to just say that he can't summon Nibiru. So 3 copies of Vanity's Fiend. We just always want to open Vanity's Fiend. It's pretty easy to get it onto the field because all your monsters special summons themselves. You basically never need to normal summon, but only in like special cases. And then 3 copies of your Crothia. This is the main searcher, adding 2 cards. It can summon itself if you activate a quick play spell card, which is nice, and then it triggers on summon to add from the graveyard or the deck 2 cards, which is nice. MST and 1 other card. 3 copies of Suen. So Suen on summon adds a Magnifistorm spell or trap, or 1 Mystical Space Typhoon from the deck to the hand. And just like the others, he can summon himself if you have an MST in your graveyard or if your opponent doesn't have any spells and traps on the field. Erdam is the same effects, except he adds a Magnifictorm monster or MST. And then Megala, if a Magnifictorm quick play spell card or MST is activated, you can summon a Magnifictorm monster from your deck or the different name from the monsters you control, and then you can't summon for the rest of the turn except wind monsters. So here's the guy that helps you fill the field basically, and then he's basically the easiest way you can get any of your other monsters onto the field. And he does somewhat invalidate the Foolish Burial, because if you have access to him, then you don't really need Foolish Burial to send these to the graveyard, but it does still give you like some options. And then 3 Ash Blossom and 1 Troll and Lockbird. This deck is actually really engine heavy, and I found that the deck doesn't mind like going second into boards, because you do have your your cards that help you board break and everything, just like special summons and triggers like on summon. So yeah, the deck actually has an easy time going second. Got 1 talents and then triple extravagance. I feel like it's necessary because the deck is somewhat inconsistent, so you do need like some extra draw power in the deck. 3 MSTs. You can search MST with everything, but it just makes it more convenient to be able to summon your guys if you have access to MST. Because if you go second, usually they'll have some cards like set, and then you don't want to be forced to basically use your normal summon to be able to start playing. You want to just like special summon. So 3 MSTs, 1 call by, 1 crossout designator. So these cards are especially important in this deck, mainly because they're quick play spell cards. So they do allow you to summon your big guys out of your hand. Also, they can help trigger your effects. For example, his effect, you can just activate crossout and call anything. Then you can trigger his effect to shuffle back. It's kind of free. 3 copies of the Rota, 3 copies of the Foolish Burial, and then 3 copies of the draw card. It should be self-explanatory why you need to max out on these cards, because your deck sort of relies on having your quick play spell cards to trigger a lot of your summons and your effects. So it's just better if you just have like access to them, so you can just hard draw them instead of having to search for them, because having to search for them makes your deck weaker to negation. So just maxing out on all of them. And then 1 copy of Sovereign Tyranny. So this deck will be adjusted to kind of like mold it to like the meta, whatever the meta is in the OCG or the TCG. Definitely in the OCG they'll be cutting down on like ratios, maybe like playing like 1 of this card and like maybe like 2 of this card to put in other like non-engine cards. But yeah, this version has been working pretty well in testing. And then in the extra deck is somewhat random, but we do have your totem birds. You'll probably need to play at least 2 totem birds because it is very important for your inboard. 1 copy of Cicada King, it's a monster negate, that's a wind, and then 1 copy of Gossip Shadow, which is a monster sort of negate kind of, and it's also a wind monster. 3 copies of Goddess, because this deck does have like only targeting removal. So if you come across any decks that have, you know, monsters that can't be destroyed or targeted or whatever, they can be a bit difficult to deal with. So just having access to this card allows you to use all your free bodies to basically get rid of that Towers monster. Access code Torko, because usually if you end on Doom Eagle, if you get Droll and Lockbirded, then you can end on Doom Eagle against some decks. Very good against graveyard reliant decks to shuffle back just a monster for free from the graveyard, and then on the next turn you can use it to make access code Torko just to try and OTK your opponent. And then this allows you to just summon Droll to make Doom Eagle more easily. Espilal Knight, and then Great Fly allows you to OTK by using your two level 3s, usually will be these ones, to make Great Fly. Then all your other monsters gain 500 attack. Or you might use this one because it has like the lowest attack. But if you can't OTK, then you will use the others. And then the side deck, just random side deck. You don't need your normal summons, so using Sphere Mode is nice. And then obviously the Charmies, and then some back row removal, just in case you don't have access to MST, so you can just like clear your opponent's back row, and then you can summon these guys for free. Anti-spell, and then like Solemns for going first to help protect your Vanity's Fiend. So yeah, we'll be testing out this deck a bit more because I really like its play style. Doesn't rely on the extra deck. It's got a very strong and consistent engine. You know, it's got like a lot of recycling ability with this card and the trap card as well. And yeah, it plays on an old meme. You know, MST negates. MST can finally negate after like 30 years. So that's pretty cool. And I also tried out a Runick version of the deck. So this is like the Runick list of the deck, because most of your Runick cards are basically just like quick play spell cards. And yeah, this tested quite well. I guess the only thing I didn't like is that if you wanted to attack for game, you basically had to not activate your quick play spell cards, and I didn't really like that aspect of it because the pure deck can just like OTK pretty easily. But yeah, the Runick list is here if you'd like to try that out. But anyways, thanks for watching. Please leave a like, comment, subscribe, and I will see you next time.